What is up, traders and investors? Jeremy Ritz here. Courage pays better than fear trading. And I wanted to take a moment to put a video together for all of you out there to talk about the whole concept of a recession, what it is. Are we currently in a recession based on what's transpiring in the markets, based on CEOs of major companies, specifically the large banks, saying that we are headed for a recession? And so, in order to understand that, I wanted to put together a quick video to go through the definitions of what characterizes a recession and inform you so that you can identify those indicators to know, are we in fact in recession territory in the United States? Check it out. So it has been rather crazy in the markets here as of late. 100, 200, 300, 400 point swings in both directions, to the downside, to the upside. On Wednesday, we had that massive move off of the 90-day tariff pause. But not lost in all of this is that in markets of extreme volatility, they can be characteristic of recessionary time periods. And I wanted to spend some time talking about what, in fact, a recession actually is. And really, what it is, it's an economic downturn that's caused by a slowing or decline in economic activity, right? And typically, what we see with recessions is that they last anywhere from 2 quarters, right? And remember, a quarter consists of 3 months. And so when we break that down 2 quarters, that is 6 months. Now, if we want to give a technical definition to this, we need to talk about GDP, which you've probably often heard. Typically, we get that data at the end of the month, and that stands for gross domestic product. And that technical definition, it's a drop in the GDP. And GDP measures the total value of goods and services. And so the simple rule is that if you have 2 straight quarters, remember a quarter being 3 months, of negative GDP, which means the economy is not growing, that is the definition of a recession. So now you are informed, you know, hey, what in the hell is a recession? It's whenever you have 2 quarters of negative GDP growth. Now let's break this down into practical terms. What are some of the indicators or things that we see in the economy? Well, the first thing is that you'll see businesses slow down with hiring or with spending, and you'll see unemployment start to rise, because if businesses aren't hiring new workers, people are going to be unemployed. You might see people begin to lose their jobs. They get laid off or they get fired. And then what you also see is the consumer pullback, and they save their money. They hold on to their money, and that causes a drop in consumer spending. So think your big retailers, they can take a hit as a result of the consumer pulling back. And as we are seeing right now, stocks take a hit. They pull back, they drop. We're seeing that significantly in the markets right now. And in fact, at the time I'm recording this, the market was down over 300 points. It's since come off its lows. But all those things are practical elements and characteristics of what a recession looks like for us as the normal everyday consumer. And so, what were some of the previous recessions that occurred? Well, I've got a list here to go back for you just to give you some examples. So, let's start with COVID in 2020. The SPX dropped 34% from its highs to its lows. And that was the shortest recession on record, lasting only 2 months. And prior to that, if we go back to 2008, we had what is known as the Great Recession, the housing crisis. That lasted 18 months. And the SPX dropped 57% from highs to its low. If you go back before that, it's the dot-com bubble in 2001 that lasted 8 months. The SPX dropped 49%. The early 90s recession, that was in 1990, 8 months, 20% from highs. And that's when Iraq invaded Kuwait. I don't know if you can remember back then. I remember being a kid when that war popped off. One of my relatives was actually involved in that conflict. But we saw a 20% drop in the stock market. If you go to the 80s, there was the early 80s recession that lasted 16 months. And the SPX dropped 26% during that time. And that was because of high inflation. And rates were up to around 20% at this time. So there's a variety of things that can cause recessions to happen. And this just gives you an idea and a list of those recent recessions, COVID being the most recent, but back to the 80s and what caused those and how long they last. And so the question is, are we now in a recession? Well, there are a lot of indicators that show us that potentially we are heading for one. We're not only seeing the market pull back, but we're seeing forecasts for GDP get downgraded. There are jobs being cut. If you think of what's happening with Doge and the governmental jobs being slashed, eventually that's going to show up in the labor reports. And so while we really can't confirm exactly right now by definition with GDP, we are seeing signs that the economy is weakening, and it's something we won't know until we're in it, whether or not we're in a recession. But the benefit of you watching this video is you now know what a recession is. You can keep an eye out for it. And obviously, the market might be sending a warning signal right now that we are potentially headed for a recession. So let me know in the comments, what do you think? Are we headed for a recession? Is this just a bump in the road? Let me know in the comments down below, and make sure you smash that subscribe button if you're enjoying the content here at Courage Pays Better Than Fear Trading. And I will see you back here next time for my next market recap.